Me to do the Zoom.
Oh, sure.
Go ahead and talk.
Yeah. So I've been an anti-nuclear activist for a very, very long time. And the person who influenced me most was Darlene Keju, who was a Marshall Islander victim. And she came to Michigan in the 1980s and spoke, and she said, "I've come to warn you." She said, "Our people are dying, and we came to warn you so that you will not make the same mistake, so that you will not be harmed by this, by the atom." So, and I think what I think of most when I think about this whole conundrum is what Pogo said, that we have met the enemy and he is us. This will just be an overview, and I'll try to go fast. Lake Huron is an incredible lake. It's often called the Forgotten Lake, but it was not forgotten by the nuclear industry or the mining industries. And there's been a lot of damage done in that watershed. Lorraine, let's see. I gotta catch my breath here. Renee Lloyd from Northwatch, she calls it the boot print, that they have left, the nuclear and mining industries have left their boot print on the whole northern Ontario and eastern Ontario. And she calls it a boot print because it is permanent. It is not like a footprint. They opened the mines in Elliot Lake, and you can see Elliot Lake on those maps right to the north of Lake Huron. And they opened 12 mines there in the 1950s. They weren't all opened at once, but that's when uranium mining started. In the 1960s, the first reactor in Ontario was built on the East Shore. In the 70s, there was more minings and more reactors. The uranium refinery was set up shop on the northern shore, west of Blind River in the 1980s. And you can see that right at the top of Lake Huron. Atomic Energy of Canada Limited looked at Massey, which is an hour north, or an hour east of Blind River. They looked at it for potential high-level nuclear waste dump, and the people there defeated it, but it became a potential site because they did digging, they looked hard there, and they've gone back there again now. The Canadian Constitution of 1867, the provinces claim sole responsibility and control over water, lands, forests, fish, and wildlife. The reserved lands of the Anishinaabe were under control of the Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development. So think about that. Indian Affairs and Northern Development. What a conflict of interest. They essentially destroyed Anishinaabe way of life, and so that they would become dependent on Western ways, and they no longer could hunt and gather and use the land. And that's a whole story that is told in this book, This Is My Homeland. And it's stories of the effects of nuclear industries by people of the Serpent River, First Nation, and the North Shore of Lake Huron. And this book, if you just read the chapter titles in this book, it tells the story just by itself. It says, "What you are losing is forever. We don't drink the water from Serpent River anymore. Why are Aboriginal people taking the thrust of this? Nobody ever told us that uranium was hazardous." And the last chapter I thought you would all like. I wanted to be chief. This is a woman chief. I wanted to be chief because I wanted to be there for the people. But those council women really made me work. So I knew you would appreciate that part. Anishinaabe, from the earliest mining in the 1600s, there were health effects that were known that the miners had respiratory illnesses. And then in Canada, there were health studies done in the 1940s that showed definitively bone cancer, lung cancer in the miners, but they were never told to the miners themselves. This was not shared among them until I think the 1970s. Anishinaabe could actually smell the uranium underground, they said, and they said it stunk, and they wouldn't live by there. Uranium development was kept in secrecy and protected as national defense, so most Canadians knew nothing, and that includes the people in Elliot Lake. Uranium was discovered in Elliot Lake in 1931. In 1957, the government of Canada contracted with the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission for more than $1.5 billion of uranium oxide. More than 2/3 of that was produced by Elliot Lake mines. 1958 mines, and that very fact, they were hand in hand with the U.S. with the Manhattan Project. Everybody says that Canada is neutral with the atomic bomb, and that is not true at all. There's a very good book called Atomic Accomplice that is sold in Canada that dispels that whole myth. In 1958, the mines milled more than 34,000 tons of ore a day in Elliot Lake. They used sulfuric acid to leach the ore, and waste was dumped into the lakes. 10 lakes are forever gone. By 1959, Canada produced more than 31 million pounds of uranium oxide, 80% from Elliot Lake. In 1963, the AEC, the Atomic Energy Commission in the U.S., stopped stockpiling uranium. When they did that, the bottom fell out of the economy in Elliot Lake. But by the 1970s, more mine owners came at Rio Algam, and they signed $400 million contract with the British Nuclear Fuels. And Elliot Lake was involved in the U.S. nuclear weapons program and the British nuclear program without knowing it. The Elliot Lake, the roads there are made of fill mixed with uranium tailings, and many of the houses are built with uranium tailings. Elliot Lake now has 200 tons of radioactive tailings and acid generating. They're acid generating, and they leach into the Serpent River. They also leach into Lake Huron at the top. There was a lawsuit by a Mining Watch and Great Lakes United a couple of years ago to Canada to clean up the tailings, but it's my understanding that nothing has been done as of yet. Uranium is an alpha and weak gamma emitter, but there's a whole decay chain and the decay chain is on the poster up there, so is one of the decay chains. There's actually a few decay chains, but that's one of them, the most common. Uranium-238 is the most prevalent in ore, and inhaled or ingested makes lung or bone cancer. The Blind River Refinery processes uranium concentrate, and it's owned totally by Cameco. It's used as, they process uranium trioxide, which is used as feed for Port Hope conversion plants. You see Port Hope over on the shore of Lake Ontario, on the northern shore of Lake Ontario, and really they just are dreadfully contaminated there. They dump fill right into the harbor. The whole town is built on radioactive fill. There's schools that are built on radioactive fill. There's another good book written by Pat McNamara called Nuclear Genocide. Let's see, where is that book? Hold on. He was on a playground committee, and his daughter went to the elementary school. And they discovered, and when you are in Port Hope, if you are working on a playground committee or any of the school committees, you have to consult with radioactive experts first before you do anything. And they discovered hot spots in the school, on the school playground. So Pat was very disturbed. He got very angry. He wrote an excellent book and then went on to write several other excellent books as well. I will, when I find that, I will, let's see. All right, it's called Nuclear Genocide in Canada. It's www.portholehistory.com.
Say it again, please.
It's Nuclear Genocide in Canada. It's at www.portholehistory.com. In 1933, Eldorado Mining and Refining Company produced radon at Port Hope. In 1942, they converted to uranium processing for a Manhattan project. And the federal government took over until 1988 when Cameco was formed. And in 1979 or 75, radon gas was detected by St. Mary's Elementary School. But Pat McNamara came along much later than that. Darlington, I guess I should get up here. On the maps, you look on the bottom part of Lake Ontario, Darlington has 4 reactors. The Pickering has 8 reactors. 4 of the Pickering reactors were closed.
No, look at the camera.
Oh.
Oh.
4 of the Pickering reactors were closed in the 1990s. 2 of them remained permanently closed for serious unresolved safety issues. The Bruce has 8 reactors. That's on Lake Huron, right across from Michigan. And it's right below the Bruce Peninsula. They have 8 reactors, 4 of whom were also closed during the mid-90s. They now are being refurbished. 2 of them were refurbished, the 2 oldest, and 2 more are intended to be refurbished soon. Refurbishment sounds very nice, but it's not. It's very dirty work. It exposes a lot of workers to a lot of problems. In fact, a couple of years ago when they were cutting the tubes, they exposed workers to alpha radiation, and when they did that, they actually called them crybabies because they wanted to quit work until they found out where the source of the radiation was coming from, and they wanted testing. And furthermore, when the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, which is a regulator, when they did further investigation, they asked all of the nuclear plants in Canada to test all their workers for alpha radiation, and they asked Bruce to test their workers for alpha radiation, and Bruce Power said no. They said they would not do that it was not necessary. There were only 200 and some workers exposed, and that was that. And the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission went along with that, which is just outrageous. So what we're fighting now is they want to put a deep underground dump. Also, the Bruce has an incinerator, low-level nuclear waste incinerator. They also have a nuclear waste dumping ground there, intermediate and low-level nuclear waste for 20 reactors. And they also want to build a deep underground nuclear waste dump there for all that nuclear waste, for that intermediate and low-level waste. They say that high-level waste will not go there, but there's no guarantees. They also, at the same time, all of Canada is looking to put a high-level waste dump. And you'll notice the map in the corner. These are the potential high-level waste dump sites. Some of them have been eliminated. On the back side of or on the second page, you'll see update, and there, at the very top, it says the sites that have been eliminated, as well as Nipigon was the first municipality to withdraw. So we are very fortunate that finally some communities are waking up and fighting back. All these communities, including OPG's proposed dump, are receiving big money from the Canadian government, and, or not from the government, but from OPG. And so the condition is that, the stipulation is that they will lose the money if they have any opposition in their communities. And so opposition has been wiped out pretty much.
What is OBG, please?
Ontario Power Generation, used to be Ontario Hydro. Ontario Hydro was reorganized in the mid-90s when those plants were shuttered because of their problems. They now are Ontario Power Generation, and they own and operate all of the nuclear plants in Ontario, but they also, sorry. But they are not allowed to operate the Bruce. That was taken away from them. And instead Bruce Power, which is a consortium, runs that plant now. And I think I have to wrap up. Yes? So, well, one of the things that we're looking at too now is they want to import or export from Chalk River, Canada, which is over by Quebec on the border. They want to export liquid high radioactive waste from Chalk River, send it down to Savannah River site. Only reason is to keep H Canyon in business at Savannah River site. Otherwise, there's no need to do that. It's from the NRU reactor, which was an experimental reactor, made isotopes, and that reactor is now closed, and they always down blended it on site. So there was no, it wasn't a proliferation problem, and they down blended it on site and stored it there. Now they want to haul it liquid high-level radioactive waste across the Great Lakes, through Canada, through the U.S. And it would take over a year for the shipments to go through, and it has never, liquid high-level radioactive waste has never been hauled on public roads in Canada or the U.S. So I left at home, unfortunately, my action sheet, and I will send that to Ellen, and I'll send it by email to people. And because there are ways you can get involved to stop these things, and I appreciate it.
Kay, is your contact information on this, on what you've handed out here so that people can get in touch with you?
It's not.
Could you tell people so they can write it down?
Sure. My email is kcumbow@greatlakes.net.
Kaycumbow.
No. K, the letter K, CUMBOW @greatlakes.net.